Hey, what's going on everyone? We have the meta snapshot for patch 13.25. There have been a couple of recent developments in the meta right now, so first things first, Ahri Sentinel is the best comp right now. The past 2 days, I would say, it became really popular all of a sudden. Before, people were just kind of playing Heartsteel. They're kind of just forcing Ezreal Caitlyn every single game. But now people are really liking this Ahri Sentinel comp. But we'll get into how to play each and every one of the comps. We'll get into how I'm approaching the patch as well. But for the rest of the comps, and again, we have 3 more weeks on the patch, so we really need to master all of these. We have Jax Reroll, Yone Reroll, and Country Reroll. In the A tier, we have Yone, Ezreal Caitlyn, KDA Ahri Akali, another Akali comp. Then we have True Damage, Katarina Reroll, Emo, Fast 9, Misfortune, Twisted Fate, Pentakill, and Rapidfire Caitlyn. So in the S and A tier, it's mainly like the high S and A tier that are going to be played the most. It really depends what start you get. Like pretty much right now, the meta is very flexible because there are a lot of things to go for. And with Heartsteel, you could pretty much take that into almost anything. So you just need a hit, which is good and bad at the same time. But finishing off the comps in the B tier, I wouldn't really play these. We have Punk, Corki Reroll, Ezreal, Seraphine, Yasuo, Heartsteel Reroll, and Olaf Reroll. There are much better things to go than this. Like for sure, like all the S tiers, if you get good starts with them, hard force it. In the A tiers, you need to wait a little bit, you know, like all these comps can win. They're all very powerful, but you need to hit the right headliners and stuff. So let's get into how to do all of that. So in the S tier, Ahri Sentinel's going to be the best comp, like comp of the week, I would say. It's just 6 Sentinel plus Ahri. There's really not too much to it. You want to do a fast 8 leveling pattern. So level up to level 8 at 4-1 or 4-2. And that's when you want to do the majority of your roll down. So if you don't know how to econ properly, you might have to do it at 4-5. But the issue with 4-5ing right now is a lot of the units you want are gone. So if we take a look back up at the top, everyone's going for Ahri. Everyone's going for Caitlyn and Ezreal. Everyone's going for Akali. So after that, if you don't hit those on 4-1 or 4-2, you're left with the leftovers, which is going to be like Twisted Fate, maybe like a Zed, things like that. Or you just take a tank. So it's really important right now to roll at 4-1 and 4-2 if you want to play the better comps. I'm not saying you have to. There are going to be times where you don't want to. But if you're doing any of the S tier or high A tier forecasts, that's where you're going to need to roll. So save up as much gold as possible. Even like 20 gold on the roll down sometimes is enough to hit everything you need. Because if you have 20 gold, you roll like 5 times, that costs 10 gold, you have 10 gold left. You'll probably see a headliner forecast in one of those times, and then you just sell a unit and buy it because it costs 12 gold. Hopefully it's going to be a good one. Isn't always the case, but again, you just got to make do. So this comp is really just 6 Sentinel plus Ahri. You could do 4 Sentinel as well. If you get Sentinel chosen, it's even easier to fit in 6 Sentinel because you could drop either Cassante or Lilia. But you could also get Ahri chosen, and then you could run less of a different unit. It all works out the same way. So you could do either Ahri or Sentinel Blitzcrank. Those are going to be the go-tos. The build on Ahri is a little weird. A lot of people are wondering why people are building Nashor's Tooth on Ahri because it's like an attack speed item. But you just need her to cast as much as possible. And with the blue buff or like any mana item, it could be Shojin, but you definitely prefer the blue buff. You just want to add some attack speed item and then one more item after that. The reason why you go Hextech Gunblade is you are going 6 Sentinels, so your front line is going to be living a very long time. So Hextech Gunblade helps heal all the Sentinels so that she could just keep casting over and over. Contrast that with some other Ahri builds where you build a damage item on her. Well, why do you do that? You're not running 6 Sentinel. But obviously, we can't always handpick our items, but if you could, these are the 3 that you probably want. In the front line, just any random tank items on Blitzcrank, utility tank items on Echo, and then who cares about the other 4 Sentinels, right? They don't really do too much. But if you want to check out the how to play section in more details, we have it on the website bunnymuffins.lol/meta, where we update this list every single Friday. And we also added some really good openers for this one. So we have Annie Headliner plus Superfan, Heartsteel, Senna Headliner, and Seraphine Headliner plus Superfan. If you haven't noticed that pattern yet, like Heartsteel or Superfan is really powerful. A lot of people are also lose streaking a bunch, so you could also explore that option too. But try to level to 8, 4-1, 4-2. And again, if you don't roll at that time, they may be gone, so you might have to pivot to something else. There's some other item options down here in case you don't get perfect items, because again, there's randomness in the game. You are not going to get perfect items all the time. So here are some other options to kind of consider. For augments, these are some pretty decent ones. You want like a couple of different items. If we looked at the top, Like Echo, Blitz, and Ahri, you have like 3 different item holders, so getting some extra items definitely helps. A lot of the support items are really powerful because they add to the tankiness of your team, so stationary support and help is on the way is pretty good. Scrappy inventions, just overall pretty solid right now. And then some of the other ones are kind of just more item augments after that. Because not only do you play this board, you could level up super late because you could go level 9. We have 8 units here right now, so when you do eventually go level 9, you just itemize a legendary, so getting extra items is definitely very useful on this comp. But moving on into the next one, we have Jax Reroll, classic comp. Only go for this comp if you get a Jeweled Gauntlet. I normally don't even play this if I can't even get it, so you need either like Jeweled Lotus from the Augment or Jeweled Gauntlet on Jax. And then I like a healing item, and then third item, it could be whatever. Edge of Night is good, Quicksilver is good, Titan's Resolve is good, Bloodthirster is good, even just like full damage is good too. And you definitely want to take EDM Jax. EDM Jax is where the build actually like really shines. But if you get Mosher, you just have to take it, because if you're forcing Jax Reroll, you kind of have to just play it. So when should you go for the Jax Reroll comp? Because this is not something you should be forcing every single game. If you ever are in the early game and you have like either a component of Hand of Justice or Jeweled Gauntlet, like if you have a glove, that is, you need that requirement plus having, I would say, 2 copies of non-headliner Jax. So if you're playing the game and it is the early game, let me kind of just remove all these. And on your bench, you have 2 Jaxes, and then you just play whatever random stuff in the early game, whatever you have there. That is something that you could kind of use for this comp. So if you get like early game Yasuo headliner, you could just dump all the items on Yasuo, put like a Hand of Justice on him, and then just keep the Jaxes on your bench. Or you can make Econ sell everything and kind of open fort. What I don't like to do is putting items on my Jax. The reason why is because once you get the headliner Jax, you're kind of stuck with playing 2 Jaxes, and then you kind of waste a bit of value because your items are on the non-headliner. So I try to use someone else on my board to hold all the Jax items in the early game, and then once you get the headliner, you put it in, put the items on him, and then ideally you 3-star Jax eventually. But since the comp relies so much on 3-starring Jax, you want to stay as healthy as possible until that point. So I really do not like having to play 2 Jaxes because they do not benefit from the EDM trait together. EDM only works on one person, so if you ever have something like Trickster's Glass, for example, that is not good for your Jax because the extra copy does not benefit from the EDM trait. Same thing with, what's the augment called? Like Hologram or something like that. It's one of the prismatic augments over here. I believe it's this one. Create a clone of your headliner with 100 to 130% of their base health. You cannot equip items on the clone. That is not that great in the EDM comp because they do not do the extra EDM effect. So that's why I don't really like playing 2 Jaxes, so I hold off on items until I do get the headliner. By the way, in case you guys want to check out this team builder, this is going to be on teamfight.lol, but it's all on the website if you want to use the links there. But those are just like a couple tips I like to use when I'm playing Jax myself. A lot of people are also experimenting with the frontline Lux, so some people put Lux in the second row. Sometimes she jumps and hits the backline units, sometimes she doesn't. It really depends on like a lot of fight RNG, but some people like putting her up front. When I watch really good players play, they do both. So sometimes you put her in second row, sometimes you put her in the back. It's really going to depend on the matchup. And like even if you put her in the second row, she's not guaranteed to jump to the back line. Her targeting, or Jax's abilities targeting, that is always leaping at the highest health enemy within a certain amount of hex. It's like your attack range +2, I believe, or +1. So it's something to kind of play around with. So I'd say if you have Lux in one place and then you're facing someone and you're like losing a fight and you don't know why, try moving her to the back, try moving Jax to like the other side. It's weird. Some fights I like him on the same side as the enemy carry because sometimes he just smurfs and jumps to them, kills them right away. But sometimes I like him to stack up a little more. If I have like a Titan's Resolve or something like that, a lot of times I like putting him opposite side and then he gets a bunch of stacks and then he's able to live once he jumps into the fray. But lots of different things you can kind of do to win the fights. You also definitely want some sort of magic penetration, so either like a Static Shiv or an Ionic Spark is pretty decent. Just put it on whoever's 2-star. If it's Set, it's Set. If it's Zac, it's Zac. If it's Poppy, it's Poppy. I think Zac probably is the best item holder in like an ideal scenario, but whoever's 2-star, just put the Ionic Spark on them just so you get more value right away. But obviously, I do prefer the Static Shiv because I feel like it just lives a little bit longer. So sometimes Lux does jump in all the way to the backline and then kind of suicides, but it is what it is. Moving on into the augments. So Submit to the Pit, obviously going to be the best one. Anything that helps Jax heal. So Idealism gives you a Hand of Justice. It's incredible. Harm Assist, incredible too. Jeweled Lotus, really nice. And then the support items are pretty good too. And obviously like Indomitable Will or anything that gives him kind of like the QSS effect is definitely warm and welcome. Oh, and by the way, 5 EDM going to be the best thing. But if you get Mosher Jax, then you have to go for 6 Mosher instead. But moving on into the next comp, we have Ahri Reroll. You just want to do 1 cost reroll leveling pattern for her. She's going to work really, really, really well with any of the reroll augments. So if you get like Trade Sector, if you get any of the tickets, going to be decent for this Ahri build. And there are kind of 2 ways to play this right now. We have like the easy version over here. If you're not like that great at the game, I recommend just playing what you see here. You have the super fans, you have the Ahri. The super fan item gives her Jeweled Gauntlet. But what a lot of the higher level players are doing right now is they're actually dropping the super fans and then putting double mana item on her, either double Shojin or Shojin plus blue buff, and then they're playing like 2 or 4 emo or just adding in a bunch of better tanks. So you could just add in like legendary tanks like Alawi. Alawi's incredible. You should probably be playing Alawi in almost every single board, even if you don't have Bruiser. But you could just put in like a lot of much beefier dudes, and then your team is going to be set from there. Just make sure you have 3 Spellweaver. Some people even like when they level up and take out the super fans, they like putting in 5 or even 7 Spellweaver. I've seen, depends on which headliner Ahri you get. I prefer emo, but you could do either or. It really doesn't matter as long as you have a lot of copies of Ahri, but people do prefer emo. I think I prefer it as well. But it doesn't matter which one you have unless you have a lot of copies of Ahri, because you really, 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 really need to hit her sometime in like middle of stage 3, sometimes even on 3-1. Obviously, like you want to just hit her super duper early, right? But we can't always control that. But do not go for reroll comps unless you have a lot of natural copies. For tank items, just throw them on Nico or Echo. Put all the real tank items on one person. Put all the utility tank items on the other. Doesn't matter which. Also, tank items in general are pretty flexible, so you could build all sorts of different stuff here, like Steadfast Heart, Crown Guard, things like that. Oh, also, only go for this comp if you actually have good Ahri items. If you do not have at least 2 components of Nashers plus Shojin in the early game, do not try for this comp because like you really just need them. But next build up we have is Country Reroll. Country Reroll is going to be a fantastic comp if you get a country start. So this is one of those, if you get it into the early game, it's like a super high roll and the game kind of plays itself. But in a lot of cases, it's like similar to the Ahri reroll comp. It's very situational. So out of all the comps we've gone over so far, we have the Ahri Sentinel comp. You could force this every game. If you're one of those people who want to force something every single game, this is going to be the comp for you. Jax Reroll, very situational. Ahri Reroll, very situational. Country Reroll, very situational. A lot of people are going to be sending me screenshots, or they have in the past week, of like, hey, I hit the Jax 3, I went 8th, what's going wrong? Well, sometimes it's not enough just to hit the unit. You have to hit it early, you have to have good items on it, and you have to hit the Zed and the Zac early on, because you need them to kind of get more EDMs in, and then that kind of snowballs the game. So what some people have been doing with the Jax Reroll comp is actually rolling on 7 instead of level 6. I forgot to mention that before, mentioning it now. Because the chance for a 2 cost, if you look at the leveling patterns, like you want to do 2 cost reroll pattern in most cases, but at level 6 versus level 7, you go from 40% to 35%, so there's still a very high chance of hitting the Jax 3-star, but you get much more improved odds on Zac, Zed, and Poppy. But now back to the Country Reroll. Again, situational comp, you need AD items, and then if you have AD items, you're mainly leaning into the Ezreal build. But if you get the country start with like Tahm Kench Country, go for this comp. Very, very powerful. Or if you get a ton of Samiras and Urgots. You want to be doing a 3-cost leveling pattern for this. So you want to stay at level 7, roll down for Urgot 3, Samira 3, and then you just have Thresh, Amumu in the front line, and Vex to kind of support your team. Vex is really good because she's an executioner for your Samira, and she gives a lot of CC because her ability just shoots out a stun. And obviously from all your trait bots, you want them to be utility units, and she is a very good example of that. Thresh as a main tank, he's just a beast. Thresh is just one of the best champions right now because he's AoE CC, what's there not to like? The good news about this comp is that it's really easy. The only hard part is knowing when to go for it. And again, you need the country start, or headliner country Samira Urgot, or having a Samira Urgot as an early drop and having good items for them. So the good news is that if you do hit the country Tahm Kench early on, you are going to be able to win streak very easily early game because a lot of people are open forting right now. So it's a bit easier to play this comp. if you hit it, but you need to hit it. But if you do, super, super good comp. Next one up, we have are the A tiers Yone Reroll. Yone is going to be one of those cases of Giga high roll, 3-cost reroll comp. It's a little unreliable compared to the country. It's not as easy to play, but once you hit it, it is super, super incredible. So it's like high risk, high reward. There are also a lot of like targeting and positioning RNG with this comp because sometimes Yone dashes from the edgelord trait and sometimes he targets the backline after he kills a dude, sometimes he doesn't. So it's really dependent on that, but you want to go for like the 6 crowd diver Yone. That's going to be the preferred for sure, but obviously you can't get that all the time. So for the headliner for Yone, like obviously edgelord or crowd diver. I prefer crowd diver than going for 6. I'd say that's the strongest like super late game cap, but you do need to hit the Kiana. So in the mid game, maybe like edgelord is a little bit better. But for this comp, you just want to do 3-cost reroll again, level to 7 at 4-1, stay level 7, slow roll for 3 stars, and find a nice time to all in for him. Unlike the country comp, where you go for Urgot and Samira, and they're both really good, this is really just a Yone show. Zed does like a little bit, but not really that much. Pretty much, you have to pray that Yone 1v9s at the end of the fight. What are some good things you want on Yone? So healing is good on him. It's a little weird because he gets healing innately from his ability. So we hover over him, he gains like stacking Omnivamp every time he casts his ability, and he gains it for the rest of combat. Again, really powerful stuff, but you still need a bit of resilience on him early on. So Bloodthirster, I'd say, is like very, very good item, and then Titan's Resolve, extremely, extremely powerful. An augment that I really like on him is, where is it, Gargantuan Resolve. That's going to be over here, where you get like a 40 stack Titan's Resolve, and then I like putting like 2 Titans on him plus a BT if I ever get that. I'd say that's like the best in slot Yone if you get Gargantuan Resolve, because he just never dies. He gets 40 stacks and then he just auto-sustains the entire fight. Another thing you want on him sometimes is getting something like Indomitable Will or like Silver Veil, because his weakness is getting crowd controlled. So if you like reduce it by a little bit, that's like one of the best things you could get on him. But overall, very solid comp. You just throw in crowd divers plus edgelords after that, and that's gonna be pretty much it. Other augments you could try out is like Three's a Crowd. Last Stand, incredibly good because it gives healing as well. Edge of Night is pretty good. What's it called? We just wrote the Edge of Night one. I really forgot the name as well. Is it like Twilight something? I don't know. But Jeweled Lotus is also decent, and Harm Assist. Jeweled Lotus is nice because you don't have to build Infinity Edge on him. It's really just BT Titans +1. And you could also play it with Heartsteel in the early game. So when I'm playing Heartsteel, I don't really go for the Yone. Maybe I should be doing it more often. I only play this comp like super sparingly, maybe like 1 or 2 times so far this set. I only go for it if I have like the perfect game for it. But I see a lot of people, they play it much more than me and they do pretty well with it. It just doesn't fit my current playstyle, but it might fit yours. Next one up we have is Ezreal Caitlyn. This is a comp I've been playing the most so far this set. I've just been going to level 8 at 4-1 or 4-2, rolling down, playing the level 8 lottery, hoping I hit Ezreal Caitlyn headliner and call it a day after that. 2-star random front lines. I literally do not care who is 2-starred in the front line, as long as they are some sort of tanky unit. I don't even care about the traits that much. I'm really just looking for like 3 and 4 cost tanks, 2-starred, and then Ezreal Caitlyn 2-star, and then throw in like whatever complementary synergy after that. That's really how I've been playing a bunch right now. It's not like super optimal, but it's just what I like to do. So you are welcome to try it. I'll go over like my full entire strategy at the end of the video after we go through all the comps. So definitely look out for that if you want to like get a little more in depth. But to play this comp, you literally just play Heartsteel in the early game, pray that you get it, or just like full lose streak in stage 2. I'm talking about like super open fort. So what should your early game board be when you're playing that? I'll show you right now. It's actually pretty complex. You just hit the reset button and you play this board all the way until stage 3. And yeah, you'll have a ton of gold. Get like an econ augment early on, such as like AFK. By the way, the stats on the econ augments right now are absolutely nuts. Let's just sort by like average placements on 2-1. So Shopping Spree, that one's hilarious because you literally just AFK, level up, and then you get like a ton of free rerolls at level 8. You hit everything. Okay, Freaky Friday and Buried Treasures, they're both good, but they're not econ ones. Stationary Support, this is like a delayed augment, so it kind of is like an econ augment because you just lose streak with it, get a ton of gold. What else? Help is on the way, same thing. We have What Doesn't Kill You here too. Like pretty much like just take my word for it. Like all these other ones, None of them are like super, super, super good early game, except for like sleight of hand and roll the dice, if you really think about it. Because like buried treasures, like yeah, it gives you a bunch of items, but it's kind of delayed, so you're still lose streaking in the early game. Same with Freaky Friday, you only get one of the items early on, and then you get the other Trinity Force later. So most of the ones at the top, they're all like pretty much econ augments. It's going to depend on what type of start you have. Like we have patient study here too, 1, 2, 3, same thing. It gives a bunch of gold. Scrappy, I would also consider Scrappy an econ augment because you just like kind of don't build any items and like just wait a little bit. Like yeah, you could win streak with it as well. But if you're playing the way I'm playing, which I don't know if I'm actually going to recommend it, it's just what I've been doing. Just full econ, roll at 4-1 because you have so much more gold. You don't even have to wait until 4-2, and then you hit everything because no one else has rolled yet. But you got to be a little fast in doing it. For items here, Ezreal definitely likes blue buff, red buff, +1, and Infinity Edge works great on both Ezreal and Caitlyn. You do want some sort of armor reduction effect, so either Last Whisper on one of the Ezreal or Caitlyn, or have Even Shroud on your front line. So choose one or the other, doesn't really matter which. And lastly, like for the tanks, like don't build all offensive items and then you have no tank items, because then your team just kind of dies really, really quickly. One other thing that's good for augments is anything with a training dummy. So crash test dummies is going to be the best one by far, because it gives you 2 dummies and they stun people. It's absolutely bonkers of an augment, but literally any training dummy augment is also really good with this comp, or anything that gives a bunch of items, because you want to itemize like 2 AD carries, preferably 2 tanks eventually, or even like your Kiana that you might run later on. So in stage 2, you want to get like an econ augment, but then in stage 3 and stage 4, you want to get item augments, you want to get training dummies, because those are what are going to be carrying you throughout the game. But yeah, pretty simple stuff. I will try to be streaming, so if you want to see how it performs in action, like just tune in there, twitch.tv/bunnymuffins, lol. But moving on into the next comp, we have KDA, Ahri, and Akali. So this comp is another Ahri comp. It's not as good, but it's still pretty decent. So with this build, you want to just put all your AD items on Akali, all the AP items on Ahri. It's really good to like flex into. So if we look at all the top comps right now, if you're going for Ahri Sentinel, but you're not really hitting all the Sentinels, or you hit a free Akali, for example, you could easily pivot into this comp, throw all the items you built in the early game on Ahri, and then finish leftover items onto Akali. If you're going for like the default AD build with Ezreal Caitlyn, feel free to put all the AD items on your Akali, and then build leftover items for Ahri after that. So it kind of is like a mix and match between the 2 AP and the AD paths. Most people just tend to stick to one of them, but if you're like a true flex player, which you probably should be on this patch, it's a nice comp to kind of have in your back pocket if you manage to hit these highly contested units. The only downside is that you kind of need both of them to start. I guess that could be true for a lot of other comps, but if you notice here, we don't really have a 4-cost tank. We have like a bunch of 3-cost tank instead. So if you don't have both Akali and Ahri 2-start, you kind of fall off against some other teams. Unless, of course, you can level up later on, throw in legendaries, and have them kind of carry for you. One good news is that you may look at the Ahri items and they do look a little different than the Sentinel Ahri items. And again, we kind of explained why before, but if you built like a Nashor's Tooth, like obviously it's still gonna work on the KDA Ahri, but most people prefer like a full damage build. Because again, like you don't have the tanks to like really stack her up. You just kind of want to be one-tapping things. And then obviously Akali's doing work as well. She's gonna be hitting the backline because she's gonna be jumping around. But speaking of Akali, a lot of people are probably wondering how to position against her. So let's kind of reset the board a bit. What you can do, let's say you're playing like a bunch of AD carries. You have Ezreal, Jhin, you have Caitlyn, you have Lucian or something like that. How are you supposed to kind of position around this? So let's say Jhin's your carry. You have like blue buff, you have maybe like an IE and like, I don't know, like a Runons or Deathblade or something like that. And then like the other units are like your filler units. Well, you just simply put Jhin in the middle and put stuff on the side. Another thing you could do is, let's say you aren't playing so many backline units, maybe you're just playing Jhin and Ezreal jumps around, right? So if you put Ezreal in the corner, he's not actually in the corner. Akali sometimes doesn't jump to him. But what you could do instead is play Alawi, and Alawi is so good right now because of this, and just put tentacles on the side. Sometimes you only have to put one of them there, you don't have to put both of them there. So you could do something like this. So what the Akali does is she is going to be on the other team. She's going to be over here, and then she's going to jump to this tentacle. She's going to be attacking there. Ezreal kind of like ease away a little bit, and then she's going to jump back to some random tank here and go back and forth between the two. Illaoi also does have an ability that revives her tentacle. So sometimes when Akali kills this tentacle, Illaoi sometimes revives it, so she keeps jumping back and forth. This keeps your Jhin alive, and hopefully he could kill everything after that. If you haven't noticed yet, a lot of things in this set come down to positioning. Again, that's another reason why some people, they message me, they're like, hey, I have 3-star Jax, I have 3-star Yone, I have 3-star whatever, and I'm losing. Well, a lot of it comes down to positioning, because sometimes like you put your melee carry right in front of someone's Ahri, she just kills it right away. Even if you second row it and then she targets them second, it doesn't really help at all, right? So a lot of it is just positioning, scouting a lot. It's super important this patch. But same thing with the other comps right now. We're just going to fast 8, Akali 2, Ahri 2. Don't really get baited by Karthus. He's kind of just like a trait bot right now. But we also have some other item options down here. Let's move on into the next build, which is another Akali build, Akali Karthus. Not my favorite comp, not my first pick, but it's a decent backup because no one's going for Karthus. So if you're playing the game and you did not get Heartsteel in the early game, you didn't win streak in the early game, you didn't get like a reroll start in the early game, you don't have enough gold to level up to 8 at 4-1 or 4-2 and then roll it down, win the 4-cost lottery, this is a good backup comp. I'm not saying it's going to be the best thing ever. I'm not saying you're going to win every game with it. I'm not saying you can't win every game with it either, but no one's going for Karthus, so you get him for pretty much free. Throw him in the back. If you have any good AP items, just like chuck them on him. And a lot of times, instead of going for like Akali, Ezreal, Caitlyn, Ahri, things like that, you just go for the Karthus instead. Same with Twisted Fate. It's another good backup. You could roll up for them at 4-5, have a bit more econ, and then slowly bleed out against the other players. It's not ideal, but that is how this comp is going to work out. The main reason why people play this is because you're going for the Ahri Akali comp, and then you're like, hey, not hitting any Ahris because she's super contested. Let's go for Karthus instead. Perfectly fine. So I guess there are 3 different paths. So you have Ahri here, right? You're going for her, or you could go for Akali. If you get Akali, what ends up happening is you could use her in either like a Caitlyn build, or you could use her in a Ahri build, or you could use her in this Karthus build. So what happens if we don't hit Ahri? Well, then you could go for the Karthus build, or you could go for the Caitlyn build. What happens if you only hit Ahri and not Akali? So if you do that, then you just play the Ahri Sentinel comp. Very, very strong too. Then you have to ask yourself, what if you're someone who hits both of them? Well, then you play the KDA comp. So that's kind of like the 3 scenarios for this Ahri and Akali thing. And you have a bunch of different options and comps to kind of choose from. But next build up we have is the true damage comp. This is going to be like the weirdest comp, I would say. Some people might expect, I know someone's going to say in the comments already, like, why isn't this higher, blah, blah, blah. Well, you need a spatula for it. The comp is much, much, much weaker without the spatula. And the only way to get the spatula is if you lose streak in the early game and our first pick on the carousel, and if it happens to appear on the carousel. So 2 things need to happen for you to get this. But yeah, true damage spatula is really, really strong right now. Let's go ahead and find it. Where is it? Over here. You just drop that on Caitlyn, you get 6 true damage. They do a ton of damage. Akali and Caitlyn are going to be absolutely destroying everyone. If we look at the stats right now and look at emblems, the most common built emblem is going to be the true damage one, and it's not even close, right? It goes like true damage, and like pretty much half of that is going to be Pentakill and KDA, and then pretty much everything else after that. And look at that. 3.75 average placement. Very nice, very nice. It's just the best one right now. So you're just going to be playing it. So what else do you want in the comp? Obviously, until you hit Qiyana, you're probably going to only be playing 4 true damage, or maybe you have true damage headliner. So maybe you have it from Akali, and then you get +1 from there. If you get Executioner Akali, what you do instead is go for the Vex in the super late game in order to get Executioner on your Akali. Assuming you have Akali 2-star, for example. Well, I guess you do if you have her headliner already, right? But one thing to keep in mind with this comp positioning wise is you want your Qiyana in front of the enemy tank. So if someone has, let's say you're facing like Akali's on the other team, or like this comp is on the other team, you want to put your Qiyana like maybe over here so that she could hit either the Akali or the Thresh. But pretty much look at whoever people's main tanks are, put Qiyana near them, because I like cloning the tank items the most, because they, right now, you have a lot of frontline tanks that just don't have any items because you're prioritizing damage items a lot of the time. So I like putting Qiyana in front of enemy tanks. A lot of people are too lazy to move right now, and sometimes people are not able to at all. So if someone's playing KDA and they have like the isolationist KDA setup or whatever it's called. I forget the exact setup of what it looks like, but they'll pretty much always have their tank in the front line like this. So against a lot of those people, you just put Qiyana right here or right here, and then you get like tons of free clone items. Overall though, like back to the comp, it's a very, very, very solid comp because you have two of the best forecasts in the game, Akali and Caitlyn. But again, you just need the true damage spatula. It's playable without it, but it's much, 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 much weaker, which is why it's in the A tier right now. If you got spatula every game, like, yeah, probably S tier. But right now, spatulas are so rare and very, very difficult to get. And then you also need to have a spare sword for it, so it's a pretty expensive spatula if you kind of think about it. How do we play this though? Level 8 lottery again, 4-1, 4-2, because you're going for two highly contested forecast units. It is what it is. Hopefully you have solid items for them. They kind of use similar ones, not really. Akali could use blue buff. Oh, another thing that's good on Akali is if you do have like the blue buff build on Akali, what you can do is put a Hand of Justice on her. This gives her 40 ability power, I believe. And when she has 40 ability power, she sometimes can like permacast. So you could just throw her in the back because she like regains mana. For each enemy that survives, all these waves refund mana, and that mana is based on how much ability power she has. If you have 40, she kind of permacasts a little bit, so she could just like throw tons of daggers at people, and it's really, really nice. But again, you could check out all the how to play sections and the early headliners. These are really, really useful. I'd say like these are the most important things early on because knowing how to like pivot into the comp or what starts are good for getting into that. I'd say that's even more helpful than like knowing what the final board looks like because you don't always have to play the exact final board. Sometimes you're playing Garen instead of Blitzcrank for 8-bit. Sometimes you're playing like Alawi because you just get Alawi. Lots of different things you could kind of try out. But we have some other items down here. Akali, again, some defensive is good on her, like BT for healing, Edge of Night for dodging a bit. But a lot of different things work on her. Qiyana, just put literally all your leftover items on her. She's a great Thieves Gloves user because she kind of uses all the stats pretty decently. Caitlyn, just typical AD carry items and then any tank items on your forecast. Next one up we have is Katarina Reroll. Definitely seen better days. This is where we start seeing like a lot of the A tier drops off. All the other comps we went over so far are kind of like the A pluses right now. If you want more info on like where each thing is placed, you could check out the links near the top around here, either like one of these two. You do have to pay for it. It's the only thing that I do have as like a paid thing, but it's not like you're not really like missing out on like that much if you don't have them, because if you watch the videos intensely, sometimes I give it away for free. But yeah, back to the comp, like there's a huge drop off between like starting now, Katarina and below. These comps are all much weaker, but if you get great, fantastic starts with them, like they're just reroll comps at the end of the day, right? So if you get like a crap ton of Katarinas, go for it, you know, with good items, of course. And then you could secondary carry like your Zed, Yone, or just like play Qiyana because Qiyana is absolutely busted right now. After that, we have Emo Reroll. Again, you only go this in very, very, very specific circumstances. If you start the game off with like decent econ and maybe you get like a lesser champion duplicator, you know, the one that like you could clone 3 costs or lower with. And let's say all the good comps are taken. You built like a jeweled gauntlet and someone else is hard forcing Jax, and then you're like, crap, I want to do a reroll comp, but Jax is taken. What other AP rerolls are there? Well, this is one of the other options, and you have to hit a bunch of Vexes as well. A lot of conditions have to be met, but they are still like decent comps if you need to play them. But as I always say, like going back to the top a little bit, there are only 8 players in your game, right? So only 8 comps can be played at most, but oftentimes since there are S tiers, people are like sharing them. So like Ezreal Caitlyn, there are definitely 2 players going for this every single game. For Country Reroll, Annie Reroll, Jax Reroll, Yone Reroll, maybe 1 player goes for them, but sometimes there are 2 Ahri players. So there could be like 2 Ahri Sentinels or 1 Ahri Sentinel plus 1 KDA Ahri and Akali. And there's also probably like 1 true damage player, 1 person who's just playing like Karthus or like Twisted Fate because they couldn't hit the other stuff. Sad times. But we pretty much already mentioned more than 8 players just by saying that. So all these other comps, you only go for them in like very specific circumstances, but they're still pretty solid if you get the right spots for them. Next comp up we have is like the Fast 9 build. If you get incredible econ, but all the good forecasts are taken, you could still Fast 9. So what you do is that you've leveled to 8, you do the same Fast level 8 at 4-1 or 4-2, roll down a little bit. If you ever get like a semi-takeable 4-cost headliner. That could be like a Poppy 2, that could be a Thresh 2, that could be Ezreal Caitlyn, obviously, Blitzcrank, Twisted Fate, things like that. You could just stop rolling, wait, and level up to level 9 at stage 5-1 or 5-2. If you have high health, this is really easy to do, or if you have one of those like super big econ augments, very, very nice, because you could still play the fast 9 and just roll down for legendaries. Yeah, you won't get like a headliner legendary in a lot of cases because it's only like a 2% chance after the nerf, but you could get a lot of 2-star legendaries just from that and absolutely destroy everyone still. But again, you only do it in very certain situations. For example, if you lose the level 8 lottery, or if you just like have a ton of econ and a ton of health, and you're able to like stabilize your board pretty easily at 4-1, 4-2, this is definitely something to consider. Obviously, we have like a ton of legendaries out here. Different items work on all of them. I'd say like the only ones with like very specific item requirements is like Sona, which wants the Rage Blade, and Jhin, which wants like a blue buff. But apart from that, all the other legendaries, they could kind of use like almost anything. Like, yeah, does Kiana prefer having some sort of survivability AD items? Yes, but if you throw like tank items on her, it's not going to be the end of the world. Same thing for Alawi, she prefers tank items, but if you have like a bunch of like bruiser items or like thieves gloves or something like that, like Alawi will do like just fine with that. Next comp up we have is Misfortune Reroll. A couple of hipsters play this, that's about it. I'd say like the most hipster comp is like the Disco Dazzler build, but Misfortune's still pretty solid. You need to have like a lesser duplicator. You need to have like maybe like Golden Ticket or something like that. But if you have like a Rage Blade, a lot of the 4-cost carries don't use Rage Blade very well. Rage Blade is really only good for like Sona and Misfortune. Apart from that, like I guess like Senna as well if you're doing like a Senna reroll build. But really, if you look at the 4-costs, like not a lot of them use Rage Blade that well. So if you have a Rage Blade early on and you slammed it because you're like trying to play for the early game, because it's still a pretty good item in the early game, this is a comp to consider, either this or Fast Nining to play with Sona, or if you get a lot of Misfortunes, or if you get the That's Jazz augment. The That's Jazz augment is incredibly powerful still, but it's almost like a requirement for this build. Next build up we have is Twisted Fate Disco Dazzler. This is another like I lost a lottery comp, play for the Twisted Fate or the Blitzcrank Disco, preferably, because then you are able to add in 5 Disco for the 2 Disco balls. Even 6 Disco is really, really good. So if you play like TF, Taric, Gragas, Blitzcrank, Nami, and you have Disco Headliner, like 6 Disco is really, really nice in the stats. Like if we type in Disco here, 6 Disco is a 4.34, incredibly powerful, but obviously like 3 and 4 Disco, a little bit lower because Twisted Fate's not your first choice right now. 5 Disco is pretty average. So if you lose the lottery, like averaging like a 4.5 is honestly going to be pretty decent, but a lot of times you want to play this board, go into level 9, and then switch it into like better units later on. If you have the Rage Blade, you could play something like a Sona, obviously. You could like itemize your Ziggs instead, or just pivot into like the regular Fast 9 that we talked about before. Again, this is great if you want to roll at 4-5 because no one clicks on this unit, so you could kind of just get them for free there, even if you did not have a lot of gold earlier on. Next build up we have is Pentakill. Pentakill Viego, not my first choice. Literally no one's playing Viego, but sometimes he does pretty decently, and you don't really have much of a choice at the end of the day. This is kind of what it looks like. Obviously you prefer 7 Pentakill, but sometimes you're playing a lot of like bad units in that case. So sometimes you do drop to 5 if you find a lot of legendaries later on. A lot of these like lower A tier comps, you just play them temporarily. It's like the temporarily embarrassed millionaires or something like that. You just play it, and then hopefully once you get to level 9, you're able to play like a real board after that. But yeah, this is just like you lost the lottery again, and you can't even hit Twisted Fate or Karthus, for example, because Karthus isn't even that important in this build. It's mainly like a Viego build. This is definitely another option. Next comp is like Rapidfire Caitlyn Bruisers. Maybe we should just combine this with the other Ezreal Caitlyn comp because it's kind of the same thing. It's just Caitlyn plus a bunch of tanks, but the other builds out there are better. Like the True Damage build is better. The Ezreal Caitlyn build is a little bit better. So it's definitely still solid, but maybe we should just combine this comp in the next week. Next up we have is a B tier Punk Reroll. Only do this with the Punk augment early on. What is it called again? It's called like mixtape or something like that, or like cassette tape. Oh, extended play. That's what it's called. This augment is the only time I would kind of consider playing Punk, or if you get like 6 jinxes before the game even starts, maybe that's another time I would consider doing this. But if we look at the stats, go to augments, teamfight.lol, and then you type in extended play, 4.97. Okay, maybe it's not that great, but I saw someone play it before and it was actually pretty good. Good thing I kind of checked this out because for some reason I remember this being much better in the stats, but apparently it's not. Okay, so maybe you only play this comp if you get like a ton of punk units. Like I'm talking like 5 or 6 jinxes at 2-1 and not settling for anything less than that. I mean, it's in the B tier for a reason, you know? Like, yeah, just do like the punk rerolls every single turn, but yeah, not your favorite comp. Corki reroll, seen better days, don't really want to play this one that much. If you have like maybe 6 or 7 Corkis at the start of the game, consider going for this. Ezreal Bruisers, this is like just the same thing as the Caitlyn builds. It's like pretty much the same exact thing, but like I prefer the non-bruiser version, but you'd really just want to play any sort of tanks. Maybe we just remove this comp next time. Yasuo reroll. If you have like 7 Yasuos, sure, do it. Anything less than that, with good items, like have like one of these 3 items, or like an Edge of Night, or like a Hand of Justice, like some sort of healing or like AD bruiser item, plus like 7 Yasuos. That's the only time I would play this. But again, if you get it, you'll probably do really well with it. Seraphine reroll. I actually see this comp being played a ton. You just need to like stall for Seraphine to really ramp up a bit. So yeah, if you have an Archangels on her and then you have a bunch of strong front tank liners, she's actually pretty solid. But again, you only want to play this if you get like 6 Seraphines on like stage 3-1 or 3-2. And that's without rolling at all. That's if you just natural that many Seraphines and you have good items for her, then yeah, go for this comp. Heartsteel reroll, not really a real comp. If you want to play Heartsteel all game, like 5-7 Heartsteel to make like a YouTube video, that's kind of when you want to play this. And then like, yeah, well, let's not even talk about Olaf. I don't think I click Olaf pretty much at all. Like, it's just not worth it to me. But yeah, let's go over how I am going to approach this patch. So since level 8 is so important, I want to do a lose streak start as much as I can because that's the only semi-guaranteed way to have enough gold to reach level 8 at 4-1 or 4-2 and roll down at least 20 gold. The great news about lose streaking is that you get first pick on Carousel. So if you get a spatula, go true damage. So you could just click that here, do the true damage build. All right, what happens if you don't get that? If I get Heartsteel start, I default to AD comps, Caitlyn, Ezreal, or like some sort of Akali comp. Really just like 2 4-cost damage carries plus 4-cost tanks. That's what I do if I get Heartsteel. Next up, we have reroll starts. So if I get like 4 or 5 Annies at stage 2-1, or if I have like Annie headliner with like amazing Annie items like Shojin, Nashers already, like 3 of the components for that, then yeah, I'll go for Annie reroll. I think people are forcing it a little too much right now though. Like they force it when they shouldn't. After that, Jax, when would I play this? If I'm on stage 3-1 or 3-2 and I have not really built any items yet because I'm on a lose streak, and if I see 5 Jaxes, like 2 Jaxes plus headliner Jax, and it's EDM, I'd go for it for sure, even if I'm contested, because I'll likely hit before the other person. If I'm uncontested, maybe 4 Jaxes would be decent enough with the headliner. So if you have the headliner Jax plus 1 regular Jax on stage 3-2, and you have good items for him, like sure, go for it. If you do not have the headliner, if I just have like a random Jax 2, I'd probably still force it even without the headliner, because it's like pretty high odds to kind of hit him on the roll down at level 6. If I don't get any of these starts, but I get like a ton of AP items or like Nashor's blue buff, then you could force the Ahri build. Honestly, Ahri is probably forceable every single game. So if you just want to only play one comp, maybe try this one. It's going to be a little rough in sometimes, but if you're like an actual super hard forcer, then you already kind of know that. But going back up here, like, yeah, that's kind of going to be pretty much it. If you like lose the lottery, go for Twist of Fate, go for like some Karthus build or Viego. Like it is what it is. Just try to get like a 4th or a 5th and get out of there. Honestly, I think you want to be like pretty flexible in this patch because there are going to be so many different directions you could go in based on like what headliners you get. So you definitely have to play around that. The ideal start is building like a red buff as your damage item at the beginning of the game because red buff fits on literally everyone. If you build like a Infinity Edge, you could really only go for attack damage carries. If you build like a Nashers, you can really only do AP comps. So if you do like Hand of Justice, red buffs, things like that, it leaves you like a little more open to different comps. But then if you do that, you don't have like the super duper best in slots in some cases. So there's always like a trade-off in TFT. But overall, like try to lose streak early or win streak, get a lot of gold, roll down at 4-1, 4-2, even if you only have like 20 gold, And yeah, you just have to hope for the best. I'll probably only update this meta snapshot next week if like something really big changes. Like for example, this Ahri Sentinel build, it was kind of played in the first week, but it really skyrocketed in popularity in the past like maybe 2 days, I would say. But if any other comp comes up like that, we'll definitely update the meta snapshot. If not, we'll take like a nice Christmas, New Year's break because it is the end of the year. So if you guys are celebrating stuff, like hopefully you all enjoy that. I'll probably just be doing stuff with my family. I'll try to stream a little bit, but I can't really guarantee what's going on. But yeah, that's going to be it from me for this week. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video. Of course, the full guide will be on bunnymuffins.lol as it always is. And if you want to see some stats and stuff, go to teamfight.lol for that. But that's going to be it for me today. Hopefully you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all next time.